If you're getting frustrated because your child only wants to eat one thing all the time, or maybe they only want to eat one of the foods that you serve at the table and you want to know if that's okay, that's the question I'm going to answer for you today. Hi, I'm Dana Snook, nutrition therapist and feeding specialist. I help take the frustration out of feeding your kids. If you spend all the time, get the food, put it on the table, and then your child only wants to eat one thing of what you served on the table, it can be really frustrating as a parent. But one thing I can tell you is kids are naturally intuitive eaters. So if your child, let's say you serve chicken, rice, broccoli, and some milk on the table, and the only thing that your child eats is rice, it's important to look back and say that your child is probably only needing rice that night. Or maybe it's the only food on the table that they really like. Children go through things called food jags, and that means that they get overly excited about one food, they kind of obsessively eat it over and over again, and then one day they just give the food up and then they never go back to eating those foods again. The problem is when you have young children, these food jags can sometimes lead into less variety with meals if you don't serve other variety with it. So here's an example I can give you. Children typically like kids foods, like chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, pizza, those type of things. So if your mission is to get your child to eat more and only serving foods that you know that they like, they might obsessively eat those foods. And let's use pizza as an example because that's a common one. So you serve pizza every night for dinner, and then one day your kid is like, I'm tired of pizza. They refuse to eat the pizza, but they have no other food to add because that's the only thing they're being served. So having that variety around these foods is really important. These food jags can happen around anything. I remember when my daughter was younger and it was fruit snacks. And so I remember everywhere we went, she wanted fruit snacks and she wanted to eat lots of packages of fruit snacks at one time, to the point that I thought, is this really ever going to end? And then one day I went to BJ's and bought a gigantic box of fruit snacks because I was going through them so much. She could have as many fruit snacks as she wanted, at the meal or the snack times, whenever I served them. And it turns out that huge box of fruit snacks sat in there for 6 months. Because after she went through the food jags, I went and bought this big box. She lost interest in them. And this is really common. This is what's going to happen with your children too. Also, children will eat based off what their body needs. So if you serve a meal, again, we'll go back to that chicken, rice, broccoli, and milk on the table, and all your child wants to do is eat the rice, rest assured it's probably what their body needs. However, on days that their body needs more protein, they will be more likely to add in the chicken, or maybe the days that they need more vitamin C, they will add in more of the broccoli. So allowing your child to take the lead is really, really important. Sometimes kids will eat large quantities. In my blog post that I'm going to link to the bottom here, I have my nephew Bryce and a picture of him. And the idea around this blog post came because one night we were at my parents' house having dinner, and my nephew, there was kiwi on the table, and he proceeded to go on and eat 4 kiwi, and he would have eaten more kiwi except for we ran out of kiwi in the house. And he was really upset at my sister because he kept yelling and kind of screeching because he's only an infant at her, and she would give him more of whatever else, I can't remember what else was on the table, but more of the potatoes or the chicken or whatever was on the table, and he just kept taking the food and throwing it on the ground and then screeching for more kiwi, and he got really upset. So this happens if a kid is really into a food, it tastes really good to them, and that's what their body's needing. They will do that. They will take a lot of one food and then they will go on. One thing that came up in one of the parents when we were talking about having this discussion in my private Facebook group for feeding kids was that she said that one time her daughter ate so many strawberries that afterwards she threw up. And sometimes this does happen, and it doesn't make it bad, and it doesn't make it it's bad for us as parents because we have to clean it up, but it's a learning experience. So rather than wanting to go into the restrictive thinking and thinking oh my God, they can't handle it, they don't know how much they need, look at it as a learning opportunity. So that might be a learning opportunity depending on how old your child is. So if your child is, I would say 18 months and older, you can talk to them about it and say, you really ate a lot of strawberries. Do you think maybe you threw up, or do you think that maybe your belly hurts because you ate a lot of strawberries? And make it a learning opportunity so that your child can learn next time that when they eat strawberries, that there probably was a point where they should have stopped a little bit more. This equates a lot to candy because parents get really nervous that their kids are going to eat so much candy that they're going to have a stomachache or they're going to throw up, and it does happen. So if your child is going through that and they do eat a lot of candy or ice cream, or maybe they ate a lot of dinner and afterwards they feel really, really full, help it to bridge it for them and let them say like, oh, your belly hurts. Why do you think your belly hurts? Do you think that maybe you ate too much? And then whatever it was. And a lot of times kids will be like, yeah, I think I ate a lot. And then you can say, well, next time you have that, maybe your body doesn't need as much as you ate that time, and help them to gently remind them that they may not need that much. Now, this brings up a whole nother subject. There are times where children are obsessed about one particular food, and it goes on for long periods of time. And by long periods of time, it might be months. It could be years where your child might be fixated on a food. If this is ever the case in your family, it would be important to look at what might be getting in the way of the child feeling food secure around that food. So sometimes if you're not serving that food very often, that can happen. Sometimes it can be if a child is not getting enough to eat, they might be craving those foods. So it's important to look back at those other things. Now, serving a variety of food at a meal, again, is really, really important because you want that child, when they decide that they don't want to eat any more of that food, that there be something else there that they can fill up on. So once you put all the food either on their tray or their plate, if they keep emptying the plate of peaches, let's say, and you just keep replacing more peaches until your child doesn't want any more peaches. And then if they're still hungry, they will go on to eat the other food that's on their plate or on their tray. Allow them to fill up on the food that you do serve. As I talked about a little bit in the beginning of the video, your children are intuitive eaters. If we don't interfere in their eating, they will do a good job at getting exactly what they need. Allow them to take the lead, and they will grow their best way if they're getting the nutrients that their body actually needs on those days. It's never easy to trust a child with their eating, but remember, we don't live in their bodies, only they live in their bodies. So only their body knows what and how much they need. And the more that you can lean on trusting your children around food while you maintaining the structure, they will do the best and they will grow up with the healthiest relationship with food. Have you ever noticed that your kids get caught up in these food jags? What's the food that your child always seems to eat and eats excessive amounts of them? Did you notice that they will eat those foods a lot and then one day kind of get rid of them? It's something that a lot of parents will go through. And I'd love to hear more about what you think of that. Hit the subscribe button because every week I will be here live to help you take the frustration out of feeding your kids. Bye-bye.